So, so now, when we go live on video, that's gonna be on YouTube. So if I go to Hamilton Radio 1 on YouTube, I'll be able to see a live feed. Okay. Twitter still scares me. Why? Because I'm old, Danny. Because I'm very old. Okay, so I have this, I have this, I have this. I want to go to Hamilton Radio. We're on in 3. So there's no more signing in or any of that stuff. Right. Thank you. Well, so now I'm sending a message to everyone on Facebook to not go to Facebook. Joke's on them. 1 minute. Ready? All right. So this week... Go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday night, and you are listening to the 53rd installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour on www.hamiltonradio.net, Channel 2. I am your host, Greg Rapport. I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that provides one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to survive and hopefully help them avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face if they don't have a proper safety net. This program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G, William Saunders, Ruben Rodriguez, and all the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Doc G is on the big board tonight, along with DJ Danny, hi, and Robin producing. Always a pleasure to see all of you. Not used to 3 in the booth. It's a party now. And thank you so much at home for tuning in. We've put together what I hope you will find to be an insightful and compelling view of the child welfare system. So get ready, because tonight on the Radio Hour, National Foster Care Youth and Alumni Policy Council has done a recent survey, and we're going to have the results for you. Also, how many children who were separated from their parents at the border between the United States and Mexico have yet to be reunited with their families? Plus, how do we train caregivers to help children of trauma heal? Those stories and more including our special guest, a young man named Alien Rubin, a high school student who has an eye-opening presentation called Coping with Bullying that you're definitely going to want to stick around for. So stay with us for the whole hour tonight. Don't go away. Just tell your friends what we're doing. Please remember all the other fine programs here at www.hamiltonradio.net. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a fabulous time with Frank Todd. And Frank programs what? Maybe about 4 hours of music a day on this station. He programs 4 hours of music a day. But he also runs a music trivia contest, and we went all the way to Manasquan, New Jersey, to Nico's Diner to compete with other people for this musical trivia. But here's the point. I had a plan going into this, and my plan was I would listen to Frank's show all day, every day, because I figured that the music that he'd be asking trivia questions about would somehow seep into his programming, like even if it was unconscious and he was unaware of it. By listening to his program every day, I would get a leg up on the competition. So anyway, I had his program on every single day, you know, while I was working. And when we got to the contest, of course, there was not one single song that he had played that whole week. To his credit, this guy knows so much music. He kept the two things completely separate, but we had a great time with Doc G and his family, and we came in second. We lost by 1 point, you know, which is not too shabby, and we all walked out the door thinking we knew where that 1 point was, and we could have tied. But the point is, Frank Todd programs some fabulous music here every day on Hamilton Radio Channel 1, so just put it on in the background while you work. And I guarantee you won't be disappointed. That's Frank Todd every day, right here on www.hamiltonradio.net. You can call into the show tonight if you want. The number is 609-807-2492. Again, that's 609-807-2492. And you can talk about what we're talking about or anything else that's on your mind as regards to the child welfare system. Let's get to some news items from NBC News. Suzanne Gamboa reports that nearly 500 children are still separated from their migrant parents. As of August 31st, nearly 500 children still separated from their immigrant parents, nearly 2 months since a federal judge ordered the youngest to be returned to their family members, and more than a month after the reunification deadline for all children. Documents filed in a lawsuit seeking to reunite the families say 497 of the 2,654 migrant children that the Trump administration took from their parents at the border are still in federal custody and not with parents. Parents of 322 of those children were deported. Judge Dana Sabrow had ordered all children under age 5 to be reunited with parents by July 10th, but the government said in documents filed Thursday that 22 of the children still separated are under the age of 5. The deadline for reuniting 5 to 18-year-old children was July 26th. On Friday, Representative Joaquin Castro, Democrat of Texas, called for a federal judge to take the reunifications out of the Trump administration's hands and appoint a special master or committee of special masters to oversee the reunifications and find the parents who have been deported and remain separated from their children who are still in U.S. custody. The special masters, he said, would be able to use all the government resources to do the job. Now, these children have been placed in facilities and kept in federal custody. There have been a number of complaints of sexual, physical, and verbal abuse and mistreatment of children, and children being given drugs to alter their behavior. In Phoenix, a man working in a shelter there was arrested on suspicion of sexually abusing a 14-year-old girl. On Thursday, 4 children held in custody at Carnes Detention Center, where that's a place where fathers and their sons were being held, pleaded for freedom and to be liberated after being re-separated from their fathers. Why? Well, lawyers for an advocacy and legal assistance group for immigrants and others in Texas said that the fathers had been re-separated from their sons after some peaceful protests at Carnes, including sit-ins, food strikes, and refusing to follow orders. The children said through a translator that one day they were in school and officials came and took them to medical, the med tent, where they were kept locked up in a room. Then they were separated again from their fathers and were not allowed to go to school for the day and a half that they were separated. Administration documents state that 322 children's parents are not in the U.S. and 167 parents, and this is fascinating, 167 parents have indicated desire against reunification, including a significant number who are not in the U.S. But here's the thing about think about this now, 167 parents who have indicated desire against reunification, basically saying, no, you keep the children. 167. ACLU has been arguing that a number of those parents were coerced or misled by the government into giving up their right to seek asylum. These incidents include parents who were told they needed to accept removal and not pursue asylum in order to be reunited with their children and parents. They were required to sign documents they did not understand in languages they do not speak that had the effect of waiving their right to seek asylum. So this story continues, and we'll be bringing it to you week after week as long as it goes on. And of course, my message at the end of every single one of these stories is we are so worried about these 500 children, and we should be. There's no reason we shouldn't be. If you have a heart, then this is a place for it to be applied. But let's not forget, in the middle of this story, which, by the way, isn't really being covered in the national media anymore, don't forget that there are 435,000 children out there who are in foster care and millions of American children who are homeless, some with families, some without. And all those children need the same outrage that we're giving to the situation at the border. In other stories, HBO acquired the rights to Foster, a documentary on Los Angeles child welfare system. This article written by John Kelly in the Chronicle of Social Change. Foster, a documentary that follows people in the Los Angeles child welfare system, will air on HBO in 2019. Foster was created by filmmakers Deborah Oppenheimer and Mark Jonathan Harris, and it uses the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services, the DCFS, as the frame to bring viewers into the day-to-day world of protecting children and helping families in crisis. Among the many people featured in the film is Jessica Chandler, who grew up in the city's foster care system and now serves as a social worker for DCFS. Interesting, Oppenheimer and Harris won the 2000 Academy Award for Best Documentary for a piece that they did called Into the Arms of Strangers, Stories of Kinder Transport. That film was also done with HBO and examined the British rescue operation that saved thousands of Jewish children during the Holocaust. The intention there was to reunite them with their parents, but most never saw their families again. Foster premiered this June at the AFI Docs Film Festival. AFI is American Film Institute. Docs, of course, stands for documentary. Premiered June at the AFI Docs Film Festival and is slated to premiere on HBO. I believe it's in October of 2019. So how do we train caregivers to help kids heal after trauma? This is one of the biggest issues in the child welfare system, this issue of trauma. I can tell you for a fact at Age Out Angels, we have a whole training program called Trauma Informed, that we give to our prospective mentors, because the effects of trauma, and when we talk about trauma, what we're really talking about here is complex childhood trauma, very different than the kind of trauma that you suffer when you fall off your bike and skin your knee and your mom kisses it and makes it all better and puts a Rugrats Band-Aid on it and stuff like that. That's trauma. Don't get me wrong. That's a traumatic experience. But you see, everything that I said after that had to do with healing, right? So what we're talking about here are things that children suffer, abuse and neglect, which is what gets you into the foster care system in the first place. And that abuse and neglect is repetitive, and there's rarely, if ever, any healing that goes on. And in fact, it's considered, not cool to show your emotions in that kind of a situation. So you think about kids now who have been placed on hot stoves, or who have had cigarettes put out on them, or who have gone without food while the money went to pay for drugs, or who were sexually abused. We're talking about some pretty serious trauma here. And they showed those effects later in life. And so training caregivers to help kids heal after trauma is a huge part of the child welfare system. And now, a comprehensive training program developed by the Casey Foundation's child welfare experts, along with the Justice Resource Institute, teaches foster parents and caregivers how to support children who are grappling with trauma. The foundation encourages public agencies and those training caregivers to use the training program. And the name they give this program is called ARC Reflections, A-R-C, ARC Reflections. Over the course of 9 sessions, foster parents learn to do several things. One is identify patterns and situations that either soothe or upset the child. Another is aid children in building skills to better regulate their emotions and behavior. Because when you suffer a complex childhood trauma, your emotions and your behavior can just get out of control so fast. They also learn to strengthen healthy bonds with the kids in their care. And, you know, that's a big part of the healing process, strengthening healthy bonds, because one of the things they learn when they're over-traumatized is not to trust anyone ever. And finally, to manage their response to trying circumstances. And these things are so terribly important. They're the kind of things that can actually keep a kid out of jail later in life. So this is available for free. Any of you out there can go look into it. It's online. You go to www.aecf.org and search for the ARC Reflections Training Program, or you could email to me at greg@ageoutangels.org. and I'll send you a link that will take you directly there. So before we get to our guest, please go to Facebook, even though we're no longer on it, and tell everyone to go to hamiltonradio.net channel 2. Or take a moment to email your whole address book and tell the world what we're doing here, because we need you to help us spread the word. And while you're doing that, let me remind you that we're on every Thursday from 8 to 9 p.m. with the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming up, not just tonight, but next week, September 13th, we are thrilled to have Marsha Robinson Lowry on the program. You don't know her name now, but you will, I promise you. She's going to talk about her experiences suing states on behalf of youth. She's a big-time lawyer. September 20th, Joshua Meekins from an organization called Give Back that has helped more people than you know attend college. So be sure to tune in every Thursday at 8 p.m. for what we consider to be our unfiltered look at the child welfare system. If you have specific questions, you can call in tonight. 609-807-2492 is the number. You can also send me your questions at greg@ageoutangels.org. I answer every single question personally. So we're going to take a short break right now. And when we come back, I'm going to introduce you to a young man you'll be hearing a lot more from in the future. I'm a little proud to have the opportunity to give him a national platform to speak his mind. Alien Rubin and Coping with Bullying after the break. Stay right where you are. And we are back. Sitting next to me is a gentleman that I've known for 3 or 4 years, actually, although not that up close and personal. Alien Rubin, welcome to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour.
Hello. Thank you.
All right, it's good to have you here. Alien, I knew of you before I knew you, because in the days of scouting a few years ago, you were the star in the world of popcorn sales. There was no one quite like you. How much money in dollar terms did you used to sell in a given year?
Well, I sell about $18,000 worth. Last year it was about 17,000, 18,000.
$18,000.
Yeah, this year I'm gonna do a bit more selling, but a little less because college applications are coming up, and I've started working the essays, and it's not fun. But
So when I first met you, or saw you, I guess I should say, you were actually giving a presentation to a group of Scout Masters. I don't think there were Scouts. I think it was mostly Scout Masters, of how to explain how to sell popcorn. So what part in your life did you realize that you were like a kind of a master at selling?
So at first, when I first started selling popcorn in 3rd grade, I wanted to get the top prize, which was at $2,500. It was a 6% college scholarship, where 6% of what you sold would be returned as a college scholarship. And so I got that, and I sold $3,000. Then in 4th grade, I sold $4,000. And then next year, I sold $10,000, and it just shot up because I thought I was good at it. And then the next year, I had a friendly rivalry with someone who's a friend now. He's at college, and we were saying, "Oh, I'll sell more than you. I'll sell more." And then we just shot up like 17,000 that year.
And then the rivalry
kept going. Yeah,
drove it a little bit. Yeah. I think it's just absolutely amazing when you finally age out or go away to college. What's your troop going to do? You don't have to answer that. It's just it's just a thought that I had. So. Tell me a little bit about you. Your situation is basically you're the product of a middle-class home with a mom and dad, right? I mean, you're not sort of our typical child welfare recipient guest on the program. What was it that led you down this path of trying to understand bullying?
So I went to something called the National Boy Scout Jamboree in when I was 11, and the kids there were quite mean to me. I think I would say some of it was bullying, some of it was I interpreted as being mean to me, and it was a very tough time for 11-year-old me. I had difficulties understanding the map, because the map they had, this was a new site for Scouts. They had never had a jamboree at this location. It was 40,000 Scouts from across the country.
Right.
And it was a new location. The map they had, it was really awful, and I couldn't understand it. And being 11, everything was really difficult. And I didn't want to go back, but afterwards, as I started to grow up, and then in 8th grade, I had a really, really tough time that year. I suffered from depression, and I felt like everyone was bullying me, even though that's in reality, I just was interpreting things like to make them like a mountain out of a molehill.
Let me just back up 1 second here, because what you were talking about is being 11-year-old at a Scout Jamboree with 40,000 other people. I mean, that's overwhelming, when you just think about it. And even though Scouts are not supposed to be like mean and bullying in that way, when you're 11 years old and you're there with a lot, I bet most of the people were older. I wonder how many 11-year-olds were actually there. And people are 16, 17, 18 years old. They may not be picking on you necessarily, but you are completely inconsequential.
Yeah.
In that kind of a setting, you have no standing, at all. And like you were saying, it's not necessarily like mean. But it's easy to feel that way.
Yeah, because you just don't fit in.
So when you went back to school, you were just in 8th grade.
No, in 11, I think I was going into
or
7th grade.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that was okay. That was fun. But then next year, I really suffered from depression, and just that year, and it was really difficult for me. And so afterwards, I realized I really want to help other kids learn how to get through tough times, and not have to go through what I went through, or even if they're going through that, have tools that I didn't have, or tools that I had to figure out to get through.
Let's talk about something that might be a little bit hard, because you told me in our pre-interview that at this point in 8th grade, when you were experiencing depression, that you were almost suicidal.
Yeah, I was.
Can you tell our audience, like, what's that like?
Well, I say almost suicidal because I I knew my parents would be upset if I killed myself, and so I wouldn't kill myself just because I feel like that, because I mean, as I reflect on it being older, like suicide's a selfish act, because it affects not you but affects everyone else around you,
Hmm.
um, and so I wouldn't do it because my parents I knew they would be upset because I knew they loved me a lot.
Hmm.
Um, but I felt like to everyone at school or like everyone in my life besides my parents, my grandmother, and like other some and other family friends, I felt like people wouldn't really miss me if I was gone, because like
Yeah.
I felt like in all my friendships that you know, people didn't want me. It's not that they didn't want me. It's just that like they it's the difference between not wanting me and like wanting me to go away versus just not wanting me to be here. It's like
Hmm.
no one would say, "Hey,
Yeah.
Elion, come sit with us at lunch," or like, but if I sat there, they'd be okay.
I think that's a really, really important point there because, a lot of the people that we work with in the child welfare system, I'm sure feel exactly that same way, except what's missing in their lives is that parental support structure that you had. Children who live in unstable housing situations,
Hmm.
foster kids, and kids whose parents are drug addicted and stuff like that. They don't have that. And goodness, if any of those people are out there listening to the show tonight, um, I well, I say the same thing that I say to everyone who tells me they're contemplating suicide. Please don't. And let's see if we can find the good
Yeah,
in your
there.
life, because you had some support that got you through that, and that's
I've heard it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
yeah, it's well put. Well put. So did you get medical help for this? I mean, did you express that depression to your parents, or did you
No,
suffer in silence?
no, I suffered in silence. My cats helped me a lot though,
Something
and
furry to pet.
yeah, once I got
Hmm.
to high school, there were lots of different clubs that you can create at high school. I created a club, actually two clubs. One of them wasn't really too popular, so it disbanded, but the other one's really popular.
Uh-huh.
And I found that with the different clubs you can find your groups really well. So I was able to find places I fit in, like Latin club, and I wanted to major in classics, like that, because and it was just a place where I could fit in and have friends and have a place to eat lunch with people. Um,
Okay. And was that the club you created? Was it the Latin?
no, that wasn't club. That was a club I joined in freshman year. I
Uh-huh.
created the Dungeons and Dragons club last
Okay.
year as a place for kids to de-stress, because
Uh-huh.
I think this, even though it's becoming less so like the crowd that plays D&D, the stereotypical D&D crowd are like the awkward, antisocial teenagers,
Hmm.
and I don't think that that's very like accurate of our club's D&D, our school's club, but I think there are definitely some kids, decent amount, who at least, even if they're not awkward and antisocial, just they don't really have a place to like hang out at, like, because it's not the party type, it's not the sports type,
Hmm.
and there's not really, even if they're not awkward and antisocial, it's not really like they don't have a club for them.
Good point. Yeah, sports and partying are the two big clubs in high school and college too, I would presume. Um, and um, so yeah, so what you're just doing is basically offering an alternative, for the people who didn't, feel comfortable in either one of those two circumstances. So that's pretty cool. So were you in ninth grade when the idea for this presentation came about?
I think so. Yeah, I don't quite remember exactly when, but
It
yeah,
wasn't
I
it wasn't a eureka moment.
no, it was over time. My mom, I think I had an idea for it, and then I talked to my mom a bit, and she thought that'd be a really good idea.
Yeah.
So we worked on it, and I presented it in 10th grade for the first time.
It's really cathartic if you think about it. I mean, you didn't go for medical help, right?
No, no, yeah.
But here you are, expressing yourself in this way, and that, I don't know, strikes up a catharsis to me. Call me crazy. So you presented it for the first time in 10th grade. Um, to whom?
To the state GSA forum, it was I had the idea and I wanted to present it, and High Tops, which is a teen health group, like teen mental health and like sexual health group that runs the state GSA forum, so Gender Sexuality Alliance.
Okay.
Uh, They offered to give me a spot there, so I presented it there, and it got really good reviews because they have the people who listen to presentations fill out like a little form,
Yeah.
and they get rate 5 different categories and 1 to 5 stars. I didn't get below, I think, a 4.3 on any category, so they really liked it. So I
Yeah.
came back the next year, presented it, really good reviews too. I presented it to a slightly modified version to the Contact in Mercer County, which is a suicide hotline. They run one of those. Um, yep.
So I'm intrigued with that. Your first presentation was the Gender and Sexuality Conference. And by the way, I just got a message from our producers that say listeners are sending love to you, Alien.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
so you're right. It was a temporary problem after all.
Yeah.
Because the reason that struck me is just because in the child welfare line of work, well, we see the highest suicide rate among LGBTQ plus
Definitely. Yeah.
people, and of course I meet a lot of folks in that situation who grew up in middle class households, come out and get suddenly kicked out of their house,
It
and so
happens.
then they're on the street, and they're on the street with absolutely no street skills, so they are pure prey.
Yeah.
And I can just imagine the horror of being in that situation. Although when you get right down to it, I can't imagine quite that level of horror. Now, you look at bullying from a different perspective than the typical that we get nowadays, because I've had people come in here and talk about bullying, but it either comes from anti-bullying, right? They want to convince everyone, to not. It's schools having zero tolerance policies. You look at bullying from a slightly different point of view. So we have 1 minute before the break, and I want you to tease our listeners and tell them what your point of view is.
I try to accept that, so not physical bullying, because that's obviously illegal, like punching, but I try to accept that verbal bullying, like name calling and stuff like that, and teasing, isn't something that we can actually expect to go away ever, because that happens in the real world. So I try to talk to the victims and help them have the tools they need to get through the situations.
Okay, so you're not on a crusade to put an end to bullying everywhere. You're telling people this is a reality of life.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, we're not talking about the physical aspect. We're saying this is verbal bullying. This is a reality of life, and you can develop tools to deal with it, to cope with it, and to not make it be an obstacle, right, in your life. So let's take a short break, and when we come back, you are going to be treated to Alien Rubin's presentation on coping with bullying. Tell your friends and don't go away. We'll be right back. And we are back. Before we get to Alien, there are a few housekeeping chores that I have to get through right now. Big charity event right down the street from our studios here in Robbinsville, New Jersey. It's the Friendlies on Washington Boulevard in Robbinsville, New Jersey, is hosting a fundraiser to support Books for Kids with Cancer, and that is going to take place on Saturday, September 15th from noon to 5 p.m. So if you're anywhere near the Robbinsville area, please be sure and stop by from noon to 5 p.m. Mike Diamore from the Capris will be singing. And believe it or not, I heard him sing recently, and his pipes are still strong. I'm sure he'll be doing all the great tunes from the doo-wop era. And they will be giving 20% of all the proceeds going to Books for Kids with Cancer. So we're looking for 5 hours of fun, and we hope to see everyone there. Also, I do need to thank all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We thank you so very much for your generosity. If you have an employee giving fund or matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we could certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. Private message me on Facebook or email to greg@ageoutangels.org. And I want to remind everyone that you can donate to Age Out Angels every time you make a purchase from Amazon. All you have to do is designate Age Out Angels to be your Amazon Smile designee, and a portion of your payment will go to Age Out Angels without it costing you 1 penny more. I can make it easy for you. Just send me an email to greg@ageoutangels.org, and I will send you a link that will take you directly to our designation. Back now with Alien Rubin and his presentation, coping with bullying. Alien, you have the floor.
So before I begin, I generally start the presentations with defining terms. I personally feel it's important to define what you're talking about, so you know what you're talking about. So two important terms that I think people don't really know the exact definitions of are bully and bullying. So a bully is a person who uses strength or influence to harm or intimidate those who are weaker. And bullying is using superior strength or influence to intimidate someone, typically to force them to do something. So what's important here is that it's about intimidating someone or harming. It's not just being mean. And I think that's important because a lot of times people think they like to throw a term, oh, that's bullying, or you're bullying me, when in reality they're not bullying you. It might be mean what they said, but unless they're trying to actually harm you, and if the intent is harm. And I think a lot of people don't think about the intent, but if the intent is to harm, then it's bullying. And I'll touch upon this a little later into the presentation about why knowing what is bullying and what isn't bullying is important. So as I said before the break, bullying comes in many forms. There's 3 main ones: physical bullying, which is punching, hitting, stealing property, vandalism, and that's illegal. And so I'm not going to be covering that in this presentation. So when I refer to bullying, it's not physical. Social bullying is slander, libel. That's also illegal. It's a little, it's a gray area between social bullying and the next type of bullying, verbal bullying, which is just teasing, name calling, can be catcalling too, or threats. But verbal bullying is not illegal. So that's what I'm going to focus on in this presentation. And when I refer to bullying, it's specifically to verbal bullying. So I like to say that in the real world, verbal bullying isn't illegal. And in the real world, because I give this presentation to mostly people who are working with students and kids, bullying doesn't get stopped in the real world. People can come up to you on the street and call you names, and that nobody's going to stop them from doing that. So it's important to learn skills to be able to cope with that. So one of my past experiences is that in 8th grade, there was a kid who was being mean to me, and he wasn't actually bullying me because he didn't even realize he was being mean to me. I just interpreted the way he would talk about what I said during a class discussion as bullying. And the truth is that once I told him that I thought he was being mean to me, he said, "Oh, I didn't realize that. Sorry." And it was always good. So it's important to make sure that people are actually being mean to you, because sometimes the intent and how it comes across are completely different. So I also said earlier that we usually focus on don't do that, it's mean when someone's being bullied. So when I went with my mom to grab a website domain, copingwithbullying.com, which hasn't been fully set up yet. So
this is going to be your website?
Yeah, I'll have one up eventually after college sometime.
Okay.
That there's all this stuff about stopping bullying, but nothing talks about coping with bullying. Nothing helps the victims, because I'm not going to talk about someone stopping bullying because it's just, I think it's an unrealistic expectation. In an ideal world, nobody would be a bully, but that just doesn't happen.
Right.
So but don't think that I'm not saying to take action. I'm just saying we should take action in a different way. And when I tell people this, it usually like leaves them wordless, because what can we do then? You know, we're told to report what happens, tell an adult, tell a teacher. And I ask people, have you done that? And has it worked? But what I mean by worked, there's two different things. There's, did it stop the bullying? Which maybe it did, it could have, definitely. But did you stop being hurt? Because bullies can be reported, but you can't report feeling hurt. It doesn't solve the problem to stop the bullying. The truth is that the problem is you're being hurt, and that's what we need to help with. Bullies are everywhere. It's like, it's a temporary solution. It's a permanent solution to, no. Well, it's a temporary solution to a permanent problem in this case. That, yeah, the bullies are coming and going, but you're always going to be hurt if you let yourself be hurt. So there aren't always HIB reports to fill out. And if someone's being mean and you feel hurt, that's what we have to deal with.
The person, your internal feelings. This is fascinating. No one's ever approached it to me like this. Seriously, I feel a TED Talk in your future. Please continue.
Maybe. I always say that the true problem is someone is being mean and you feel hurt. And that's what I focus on.
Okay.
So the question becomes, how do you stop letting them affect you? And we live in a system where we're trying to stop people from being bullies, but in the end, people can do what they want. They have free will. There are no laws against this. Some people are just mean, and so it works. But if we figure out a way to stop being hurt, we fix the issue. There's no issue. It's a non-issue. Bullies aren't an issue because we're not hurt. So again, not about physical bullying. If you're being punched, like that's a little different because you need to get help for that. And if you feel you're being discriminated against, talk to an adult. In the real world, unfortunately, sexual orientation is not currently a protected class. But in most, I think all schools, or at least most schools and most kid places, it is.
Right.
So I like to focus on 3 different ways to protect and help yourself get through a situation. And the first way, it sounds simple, it can be difficult in practice, but it's just removing yourself from the situation. You walk away, go sit somewhere else, move your seat. You can switch classes, which is something I had to do in 7th grade because there was a group of kids that were all together. It was really kind of just bad for me, and I just couldn't really learn that well. So I just asked my teacher, okay, can I swap to 2nd period? And I did.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Without making it personal, you noticed you were just in a toxic environment.
Yeah. It was kind of personal. I felt, it was just rough. But it worked. It was a simple fix.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like this because they say, why should I be the one to move? They're the ones doing something wrong. And yeah, that's true. But do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because you can't always have both.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But, it's just what happens. But sometimes you can't remove yourself from the situation. And this is specifically for kids. So it's probably a good idea to ask an adult, but not in the way you might think. So instead of normally asking an adult, you need to stop this, I'm being bullied, file an HIB report, you should try to keep your power. Ask an adult, I don't like how these people are doing this, whatever this is. Could you keep an eye out for this to help me manage the situation? Saying this keeps you in power of the situation. If you tell an adult to fix it for you, you can't do anything else. That's it. You've basically given up. And it can make you a bigger target by telling the bullies that you can't fight your own battles. If you ask the adult to help you and use them as an ally, you have someone that can work with you, not someone who works without you. And adults do care. I find that, I asked my teacher to help swap my class, and she was all for it, and it was easy. And making people aware of something is just a simple step to help solve an issue. So, way number 2 is just stop letting them have power. Bullies have power because they affect you, as I said. And there's a very easy way to make them lose their power if you just stop caring. And that's very hard to do. It sounds a lot simpler than actually, because we do care about what other people think. Everyone says, oh, don't care what other people think, just be happy with yourself. But we do care, and it's really difficult. But if you don't care what bullies say, you're bully proof, because That's just the nature of it. The definition said that someone is trying to harm or intimidate you, but if you can't be harmed or intimidated, you can't be bullied. So many times you can just realize, wait, they're saying something dumb that's illogical and unreasonable. Why are they saying that? Whatever, they're just an idiot. So I find, like, in high school or middle school, and people are being mean, they're usually trying to get a reaction, and if you don't care, then they won't make fun of you. Or even if they do, it doesn't matter because you don't care. This is definitely the best way. Just stop letting them have power. It's also really difficult because it's one thing to say don't care, but it's another thing to actually don't care. So the third way I think is a lot easier to do, and it's to find the happiness in your life. Everybody tries to, I find that everybody, including myself, when I was going through 8th grade and had a really tough time, we take the hard parts of our life and we blow them up to be huge parts of our life. We focus our entire life around what's bad that's happening. We completely forget that there's also a good part of our life. For me, what helped me get through my depression was my cats, because I realized that, hey, well, I have my cats too. I can just hug them, and they make me happy, and I love them. So if you focus on what brings you joy, happiness, then it'll help you get through it. And yeah, you're still being hurt, but you have a good part too. And I know something for me was that I thought I didn't have any friends, but I can guarantee that you have friends. Even if you don't think you do, there definitely are people that care you. There's at least one person that cares about you. Most likely, I can almost say for certain, many more. It's just sometimes the way we perceive people caring about us doesn't match of how people intend it. I like to think of it as like this yin yang thing. You have bad and good, and they balance out. Because it's like, if we never experience sadness, we don't know what happiness really feels like. So a bully has power, but you also have power. If you give up your power, you've lost. You can't do that. Don't let the bullies win.
Good message. So let's go back over the three basic tools, right?
So that would be walk away from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't care about what they're saying and don't let it hurt you. And finding the happiness in your life. And usually combination of these tools, some are easier for some people. They're very basic, but they're simple because in times when you're feeling like emotionally stressed, they need to be simple. It's hard. Humans are emotional thinkers, not rational thinkers. So when we are in times of great emotional despair, we need something simple. Say, oh wait, remove myself. I can go sit on that table instead of this table and just get away from these people.
Yeah.
Or don't care. Think about, wait, why is they said illogical? Or finding happiness. All right, well, I didn't like this, but when I get home, I can go swimming and I'll have fun then.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that with those, with those three ways, it can be a lot easier to survive. And it's not 100% foolproof. We still get hurt, and I think that's the nature of being human. We have feelings. We have these chemicals in our brain that feel like, when we take something, we feel it's personal because that's how we are. And it's important to remember that, it's always temporary. Anytime something bad's happening, it is temporary, and we just need to get through it because, we just need to stumble on.
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with experiencing the whole palette of emotion in your life. Sadness and fear, it's all part of that palette. I mean, happy things end, sad things end, the weekend ends, and the work week begins. Happiness ends and sadness begins. Sometimes it's just all part of, of a rich palette of emotions.
Yeah. I think one other thing I like to say a lot is that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. A lot of times people think, oh, you had to ask for help. Wow, you're not strong enough to do it on your own.
Yeah.
But I think because people don't like to ask for help, it means that asking for help is a good thing that makes you strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like last year I had a few really hard classes being a junior in high school. And on like every test or every assignment, I would go to my teachers and ask them, all right, I didn't understand this. Can you explain this to me again? Or was this right? I'm not quite sure about this. And I ended up with A's in those hard classes because I was asking for help weekly,
Right.
sometimes more than that.
And but also it seems like what you're advising people to do here is when they ask for help, to not be asking for the person to solve the problem, but to become your ally and assist you,
Yeah.
you know, in solving that problem. So I just want to make it clear to our listeners out there that when Alien's saying that you should ask for help, there's kind of a right way to do it, and a less powerful way to do it.
That plays into the power aspect, because even if you ask for help to stop bullying and it gets stopped, even though you feel like, yeah, you've won, you've gotten rid of the bullies, you still feel like, well, I didn't do it, I'm still vulnerable, and if they find a different way to be mean to me, like a different place, what'll I do then? Whereas if you work with an adult to stop it, then you'll say, yeah, I got this, I can do this, and you'll feel more better at yourself and more self-confident. And it's you know, it's also just something that makes you confident, and that confidence can help you in other parts of your life too, not just feeling sad, you know.
I would suggest that you might have to go to more than one adult to get the one who can actually help you.
Yeah.
You know, there's certainly nothing wrong with going to as many people as you need to, because this might be new for for adults. I know this is the first time I'm hearing it, so you know, even an adult who cares about you may not necessarily have all the right answers.
So I think like, and if you know, if you're suffering from depression and like clinical depression, I think it's important to get medical aid, even though I didn't, because like if your foot was hurting you, you'd see a doctor about your foot. If your mind is hurting you, you should see a doctor about your mind. It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
And you know, we teach people like how to treat like wounds, like physical wounds. We don't really teach that many people how to treat mental wounds.
Certainly. Now, did I see some phone numbers there or websites or something that you advise people to go to?
Yeah, so there are a few specific ones that I like to use. So there's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Yeah.
So that's www.suicidepreventionlifeline.org, and their phone number is 1-800-273-8255, or that 8255 is TALK. And that's just a suicide hotline. I think they're very good people to talk to. I mean, we found these online, that these are good ones that are recommended by other people.
New Jersey Hope Line.
Yeah. We specifically know somebody from the Trevor Project too. NJ Hope Line is www.njhopeline.com, 1-855-646735. And then the Trevor Project, we have a family friend, or like my mom is a friend who works with them.
Okay.
So he's actually the guy who does Mike Hot Pence. He looks like Mike Pence, and he does like charity for the Trevor Project, and yeah, he's
a celebrity lookalike.
Yeah, he looks like him, and he like donates to these LGBTQ charities and stuff like that. So it's
sweet. So this is the www.thetrevorproject.org. Is that how it works?
Yeah, they have an online chat system.
Okay.
So anytime in that, like because a lot of people feeling vulnerable aren't really comfortable talking, but being behind a chat window is a lot more comfortable for a lot of people, and so it's easier to talk then. So they have a chat system for that, and it's 1-866-488-7386, which is their phone number, and you can also text with texting Trevor, TREVOR, to 1-202-304-1200.
Okay. Boy, I always love sitting next to a high school student who's going to be going places in life, because it actually makes me young. You might not believe that, but Alien Rubin, it's a pleasure having you on the program. I wish you nothing but good luck in the future.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll come back and tell us how it goes.
Right. Well, I hope to. I hope it goes well.
Okay, I'm sure that it will. We're going to take a short break now. I'll be back in 1 minute with a few final thoughts. Alien Rubin coping with bullying.
Thank you.
And we are back. This is about understanding the impact of reunification services. The National Foster Care Youth and Alumni Policy Council, and they were guests here on the show probably about 5 or 6 months ago. We should have them back soon. They're a good organization. They conducted a survey on the experiences of youth returning home after being placed in foster care. This is reunification results. These results found that 46% of respondents received no information or support to return home, and 63% of youth surveyed who were reunified with their family eventually returned to foster care. It's interesting, 46% received no information or support to return home. It's sort of the way our system works right now, and a lot of efforts are being made to change it, but it's like, you know, making a left turn with the Titanic. It's going to take some time to do that, because what happens is basically a child has no involvement with child welfare until that moment that they get removed from the house. And then they get removed from the house, and all these services kick in until that moment when they get sent back to the biological house. And the moment they get sent back to the biological house is when the services just kind of fall off the shelf. And so there you have it, 63% of youth surveyed who were reunified with family eventually returned to foster care. The Family First Prevention Act should do some things to change that, and we'll be talking about that more in weeks to come. I wanted to talk for a minute about felony convictions and also a little bit about marijuana use, because these are two clearly specific areas where a line is drawn in the sand. And being on the wrong side of either of those prevents a person from earning a livable wage or being eligible for a host of social services. Felony convictions is just stuck in my craw this week. I think I talked a little bit about marijuana last week because of recidivism. Because if we're concerned about the recidivism rate, then but then we don't give people a real opportunity to turn their lives around when they get out of prison, then, you know, we have to accept the possibility that recidivism is to a certain percentage a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that it's perpetuated by our societal actions toward a person who's released from prison. We all do it, you know, to some degree. To be a volunteer at Age Out Angels, for example, you have to pass a state and federal fingerprint background check. I think it's generally assumed that if a youth has a history of negative interactions with law enforcement, they're less likely to complete programs. And so what happens is that they become a greater risk for donated money. And people who donate money to nonprofit organizations do not like to see their money go down a black hole. And so whether it's government money or individual donors, no one wants to throw what they perceive to be good money after bad. And prison and drug use are the two sort of benchmarks that frequently determine that. And that won't change until we create agencies where people are given an opportunity to come out of prison or come away from a felony conviction, because they don't always result in prison, and really flourish. I mean, not just get a job as a stock person at Walmart, but get training and work towards a career. And I'm speaking especially of people convicted of nonviolent felonies. So don't get me wrong here. I believe that there really do exist in the world people who can only be described as bad guys. There are bad guys out there. There are people without consciences. There are people who will hurt and kill others without hesitation. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I mean, to me, things like rape and child molestation and aggravated assault rank right up there with murder and other truly heinous acts. So that's not what I'm talking about. But there are also plenty of stories about people who get arrested for driving while black, and knuckleheaded youth who will take a swing at police that they perceive as harassing them because they didn't do anything wrong, just to posture for their friends. And stuff like that can end up as felony convictions that stay with them for the rest of their lives, and make it so that illegal activities then become the only way for them to have a shot at a livable wage. And I say this from an economics point of view a lot of times to people, because if you're out there listening tonight and you don't have a heart, and I'm sure there's no one out there in this situation, but you may know someone who's like this. If you don't have a heart, you feel nothing in your heart for these people, consider the economics. It will cost all of us as taxpayers a whole lot more to send people back to prison than it would be to help them have a career. And it's a shame when it's the system that is the driving force, creating recidivism and sending people back to the only life that they really have that's available to them. So, a lot of what we try to do in the child welfare industry is to try to take people who are taking money out of the system and basically grow them up to be taxpayers. Think about the difference there. Think about the money swing between how much it costs to keep a person in jail, or drug addiction programs and things like that, compared to that person, that same human being who's out there paying taxes all the time. So you can look at it from an emotional point of view. You can look at it from an economic point of view. But any way you look at it, someone who commits a felony and then goes to fill out a job application always hits a thud on that box that says, check here if you've been convicted of a felony. And they know when they do that, their heart sinks, and they know that they have so much less chance to earn a living at that moment. And maybe we should all be doing something about that. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse than they do now. And we thank you so much for tuning in and maybe helping us spread the word. Again, we offer humble thanks to Hamilton Radio, to my most excellent guest, Alien Rubin, and his presentation, Coping with Bullying. Thanks to our engineer, Doc G, and DJ Danny tonight. I'm sorry, I'm stammering on your name, Danny, because I'm just not used to seeing you there. And producer Robin. Music, as always, provided by Kurt Seldenbridge, owner-operator of the Cave Rehearsal Recording Space in Pennsylvania. Join me next Thursday, September 13th at 8 p.m. when my guest will be Marsha Robinson Lowry. So until then, let's make this week the best week ever. Good night.